All right, and we are live. Let's see if we could start things off with a little bit of roll. See who's in the live chat first. This is how we do, Tom. We start with the regulars that are normally here in the live chat, and we say our hellos, and then we get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast. As you guys are piling in, make sure you give your hellos. We have a special guest today, Mr. Tom Spark, the man, the legend, the myth. So what you could do, Tom, is they'll be piling in. We've got a good gang. They'll be saying hello. We'll just go through some of the people that are in there, and then we'll kind of get started.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, glad you could make it. I'm so happy to have you. It's good to have some guests on the Sneed Mobile Tech Podcast. Guys, Mr. Tom Spark is a man of many talents, and his claim to fame is I would consider him to be the VPN Lord. All things VPN. So we're going to talk about all the different things that he does on YouTube, as well as his website. We'll talk about that, and we'll kind of bridge a connection between what we do here on the channel with the topics we cover and what he does on his channel. So in the live chat, we have Tom, Timothy, Big Bry, Sebastian. We got Frankie in the house. Pete is moderating today. Watch out for the wrench. We have, what else we got in here? Jarrett's here. We have Samuel's in the house. He's here early today. Don't see Samuel very often. We have Timothy. Martin is here. Chris is here. Cameron. Who else? D-Gaff is here. Jessica Fuller is here. Nintendo 504 is here. Jim E is here. Dave B is also here. Man, it's a good showing. We already got 31 in here, Tom. Things are looking good.
Nice.
Already got some super chats. Dave B, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Just so you know, Tom, Dave B's Tech, he's got his YouTube channel. He's also a contributor here on the podcast.
Cool.
Willie Watson's here. Scott is here. The 10 man of TN is here. And, of course, the friendly neighborhood Blue Shell. It wouldn't be a podcast without you. Thank you for the super chat. Audio is a bit scratchy. Hopefully that has kind of worked itself out. Hopefully it's not too bad. And Jamal is here, and I think we're good to go. All right, so to get things started off right, this is the Sneed Mobile Tech Podcast with special guest Tom Spark of the famous YouTube channel Tom Spark VPN Reviews. So Tom Spark is what I consider to be a trusted voice in VPNs. He has been, I don't know, probably making videos for a couple of years now. He's a well-known voice in VPN reviews. He also has a website. What I'm going to do is I want to give Tom the opportunity to kind of take the floor, talk a little bit about himself, what he does on his channel, and kind of the mission of his work. So, Tom, glad to have you. Glad you could be here. You go ahead and have the floor.
Cool. Yeah, so I started reviewing VPNs around 2015. I actually started my YouTube channel just about 1.5 years ago. The VPN space really is quite competitive, not only because there's so many VPNs out there, but also because there are so many VPN review websites. And my kind of niche, I think, is that it sounds like something you want to have to do, but my niche is that I don't really do sponsored content. I don't really do reviews based on what are called CPA deals. So a lot of times VPNs, what they'll do is they'll pay reviews to write content about them and pretty much just write good things about them. So my channel and my former blog and then my YouTube channel, my new website, I try to make content that is very critical. Sometimes VPNs think it's too critical, and that's kind of got me in trouble sometimes with them. But I think that's a good thing for the community to see exactly what's going on behind the scenes. And I guess that's kind of what I try to do the most, show what's really going on behind the scenes, not only in what you look for in a VPN, what VPNs are expensive, what VPNs are cheap, what VPNs have good reputation. There's so many things that you could judge a VPN on, and I think I have been trying to do that to the best of my ability on my YouTube channel. So that's a pretty good summation of what I've been trying to do. And I also like talking about internet privacy and stuff like that as well. I'm a huge gadget guru as well. So some of the stuff you've been doing here, Sneed, looks really cool to me. Some of your tech unboxing is very cool. And yeah, just excited to be here.
All right. So, what I've kind of heard from you there and what you were talking about in the description of what you do in your channel, there are a couple things that you mentioned that are really important to me. One thing was the idea that I don't have, you mentioned you don't really have like sponsorships that are going to influence what you do as a creator.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes what happens is people get paid and it just kind of forces its way in terms of bias. And you kind of have to lean in the way of what you're reviewing.
Mm-hmm.
So by not having that sponsorship, and this is something that I've come across, people have recommended, hey, you need to have, some form of an affiliation or a deal or a sponsorship with some other companies. You can make some money this way. And honestly, I can't jive with that, because what's going to end up happening is, you're going to pull towards one side when they're cutting you the check.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel it's something that anybody with integrity and character is going to think to themselves, is this the right thing for me to be doing? I know I'm going to make money off of it, but is that going to question my integrity and authenticity of my channel in terms of what I make?
Right. And there's one thing I want to make clear too, that like in the online marketing space, there's big differences between what people think of sponsorships and affiliations. So affiliations, I made an entire video on it, aren't necessarily like, I guess what you might consider like bad or evil. But what happens is that it's all kind of behind the scenes, and some websites and VPN companies have such high inflated commission rates that people almost feel like they have to promote these VPNs. And if you've seen any VPN, advertised on YouTube, maybe PewDiePie, Boogie2988, some of the biggest VPN people who aren't even involved in, cybersecurity or internet privacy, they're going to be pushing VPNs that give them the highest commission rates. And that's just like how it works pretty much. And my channel is different because I don't.
VPN, Tom.
Yeah.
And that's something that I could actually speak to on a personal level. But I just want to mention that before you go on. Go ahead and finish what you had to say.
Yeah. People come to me all the time saying they got a NordVPN ad on their videos. They even do ads on TV, which is pretty crazy when you think about it, because VPN technology, for the most part, while it is getting bigger, it is still pretty niche. You go up to your family member, you ask them if they know what a VPN is. Chances are they're going to say no. So to see these companies getting so, I guess they're spending so much money on marketing, it's pretty crazy to see that.
I've struggled with a couple of things. So one of the things that I really don't understand is, when it comes to VPNs, there are VPNs that are considered to be trusted, but it's almost like the only people that know about them as being trusted are these like VPN gurus. NordVPN is a well-known one, but it's not what the gurus are using. It's not what I don't want to say professional VPN users, but those that are in the know. They kind of prey, to the novice in a certain
definitely extent. Do. NordVPN in particular has gotten in trouble for false advertising, saying that if you go in a public Wi-Fi space that you're going to get like viruses. Now, it's not the safest thing to do, but I think it's definitely true that a lot of these companies that have big marketing budgets definitely do kind of search for people who don't know about the space, and they want to turn them into customers. That's a good point.
So what I find to be frustrating, as I've watched the content of your channel and I've gotten to know some of the VPNs better, there are certain ones that you push because you see that they have qualities that are respectable, and you see that they do their best to offer a good product. Some of the names that I hear are like Windscribe and TorGuard. There are a couple of, I think is it Privacy VPN is another one that you promote in terms of being a reliable and a trustworthy VPN. Most of it has to do with protecting the user's rights and protecting their privacy. What I would want you to explain to maybe my audience is more about why the privacy is important and why you would use a VPN.
Sure. So basically, anytime you're connected to the internet, you're connected to your ISP, and most people don't really realize it, but pretty much anything you're doing, your internet service provider, whether it's Comcast or Verizon, they can pretty much see what you're doing to an extent that's pretty crazy. a lot of times they could see what if you're torrenting something, downloading stuff, they could see the amount of data you're using. A lot of times they can see even stuff like your browsing history. It's pretty crazy how much stuff they can really see. And not only that, but a lot of people like using VPNs to prevent, websites themselves from tracking them with advertisements or stuff like that. Some people, even in the gaming space, use VPNs to protect their IP address from getting DDoS attacked and stuff like that. And we see kind of large examples of VPN use in the corporate space where these companies have to protect their private data. And they use VPNs to do so. Now, they're not necessarily using these private VPN providers because they're more for like kind of the people at home or consumers. But if these companies are using VPNs to protect their data, you might be thinking, why shouldn't I use a VPN to protect my data?
So, in terms of most reliable VPNs, you have like 5 areas that you consider to be the characteristics that somebody would want to know about when thinking and considering a certain VPN. What are those 5 categories?
So I consider the pricing. Firstly, I think pricing is something that you're not going to see many people consider when it comes to VPN, which is weird, right? We all have budgets. We all subscribe to Netflix and Hulu. Who wants more subscriptions? And a lot of people go to free VPNs, which aren't good. They're often slow. They often sell your data to advertisers. Sometimes they're even malware. So pricing is something that is very, you really got to take a look at it. Something's either, you don't want to buy something that's too expensive and you don't want to buy something that's, free. So I consider pricing one of the most important categories. You see a lot of the most popular marketed VPNs being $13 a month, $100 a year, which is too expensive, in my opinion, because there are cheaper VPNs out there that give you, the same kind of product. But I also consider, stuff like the application, how functional it is, if there's any bugs. I consider stuff like speeds, what kind of speeds you're going to get with the VPN, whether you're torrenting or downloading content, streaming Netflix, 4K. And also consider stuff like the reputation of the company. Has it done anything sketchy in the past? Stuff like customer support as well is very important. Some VPNs have excellent support, a couple minute ticket response times, excellent live chat. Some VPNs don't have any of that, barely at all. And it's tricky to find out these things by yourself unless you want to pay for every VPN and go through the grueling testing that I have. So that's kind of, I guess I'm trying to do the dirty work for people so they don't have to, waste their money and test these things.
Right. One of the people here, one of the subscribers here on my channel, he mentioned a VPN that is actually provided by Verizon, which, if you think about it, sounds really strange, like almost counterproductive. Like, why would a wireless service provider want to offer a VPN for their own service? So is that something that you would trust? Because I feel like that's not something I can jive with.
Yeah, you have a good point there. I think I actually might have wrote an article at one point about stuff like this happening. I think Verizon and these companies kind of know their reputation is not always the best, especially with collecting data on the consumers and stuff like that. I personally don't think I would trust it too much as something to use. I know stuff like Samsung has like developed stuff like cryptocurrency wallets and stuff like that. I see it kind of as a similar thing, right? If you have a product or if you could find a product that you know and trust, you're not necessarily just going to use the product that's on your phone, right? But I think maybe it could be good to let people know about VPN. Maybe they see it on their phone or see it, they think, oh, what is VPN? It could be good. It might be better than nothing, I guess, too.
Yeah, because one of the things that I often have to work around, Tom, is I know it may be against the terms of policy. I'm not exactly sure because terminology is kind of funny when it comes to stuff like this. When you agree to certain terms of service with a provider, say for example Verizon was my provider, I find it very frustrating when they cap my video at 720p resolution. Now,
Yes.
in and of itself, that's not that big of a deal. But let's say they sell me a device and that device can do quad HD resolution video. I find it frustrating that they're willing to sell me a quad HD display device, but they're not willing to give me quad HD video bandwidth so that I can get that type of resolution. So what I look at is I run a speed test. I see that my data speeds are at 40, 50, 80, 100 megabits per second, for example. that is absolutely sufficient to do quad HD, 4K, 8K, whatever I need. With a
Mhm.
VPN, I could bypass that throttle because what ends up happening is the data becomes rerouted and it sees it as regular data and not video data.
Right.
Could you explain? I don't know if you're familiar with this. Have you perhaps maybe promoted services or, you know, identified this to the normal user like this is an effective way to do this sort of thing? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, so that is one category where VPNs are used to bypass throttling is basically what you're talking about. So the throttling kind of like when you're using video, and they do that as well in other categories of kind of internet use. Companies don't necessarily want you using torrent downloads, P2P downloads, peer-to-peer. So you might be using uTorrent or qubit torrent downloading stuff. And if your provider sees you using P2P network traffic, they can throttle it and make it slower. So if you turn on your VPN, you're encrypting your traffic. Your ISP can't see what you're doing necessarily, and they can't throttle it. So that's a basic idea. Speaking to the 720p thing, I agree that is really stupid, and I think a lot of people don't really even realize that that is happening, and that the fidelity could be so much better if it wasn't capped like that. But yeah, it's an interesting point. Some people talk about iPhones and that the screen isn't, as good as resolution, but the video is capped anyway. Some people think, it's not a big deal whether they're going to cap the quality anyways.
Is there anything else that you would say there's like an LTE or a wireless data transmission usage for using a VPN besides video throttle?
Are we talking about like in terms of mobile application, like going around with phones?
Yeah, so like let's say for example, like somebody's considering using a VPN besides just a video throttle. Is there something else that you would say could be beneficial to somebody, say just in wireless applications? So we're talking mobile, just on their phones, besides the video throttle. Any other reason to use a VPN?
So it kind of depends on where you are. Another thing that could be useful is that people who are in Australia, the UK, a lot of countries in the world have limited access to certain streaming applications. So if you're in Australia, the streaming library over there is going to be pretty small compared to the streaming library that US people get with Netflix. Not only that, but a lot of the streaming services like Hulu, Amazon Prime are US only. So if you're using a VPN that is compatible with these streaming services, you can actually connect to it and trick these services into thinking that you're within the US. Therefore, you can get the US content, get the most streaming content you want, even unlock some of these, US-based streaming services. Crunchyroll is another example. What some people do is, for example, I'm in the US, I could use a VPN to kind of trick the BBC iPlayer website into thinking I'm in the UK. I could watch free UK content if I wanted in the US, which normally isn't possible with just the regular connection, right? In terms of other applications, like I said, some people like using VPNs for gaming to protect their IP from DDoS attacks. Like I said, with torrenting, people like to protect their IP in the torrent swarm, so your ISP won't know you're torrenting anything. There are a lot of other applications as well that kind of depends on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go in terms of being private and just kind of secure on the internet, and as well as like how anonymous you want to be, right?
Is anybody, I'm sure a lot of people in the live chat are wondering this, what's the best way to avoid the VPN slowdown? There's just a tendency to lose speed as you go from server to device, and these different, the transmission is just inevitable. You're going to lose some speed. What's the expected drop off in speed, say as a percentage, when you go from a quality VPN to your device?
It kind of depends on the VPN, right? I've found that some VPNs are much quicker than others. This could be that they are just giving more bandwidth to the users. They're more generous with it. They're not capping it. They're not as stingy, I guess you could say. Some VPNs are exceedingly popular, might have slower speeds even because they just have so many users on their network. Sometimes smaller VPN providers have faster speeds because they have less users on their network. But sometimes those smaller VPN providers at the same time will have less servers, So it becomes kind of a tricky balance. That's one reason why I test speeds on each one of my VPNs to kind of show my users what they can expect. Um, but some of the top VPNs that I've rated, if I'm downloading something at 20 megabytes a second, you could maybe expect like half. I would say that's pretty good. But you can also find other ways to download stuff quicker. And for streaming, most stuff will be pretty good. You won't notice it, especially browsing and stuff like that. For gaming, you won't have too bad of a ping, maybe a little bit increase, but nothing too bad. But people can also use proxies in their BitTorrent applications and stuff like that. So the difference between a proxy and a VPN is that proxy is not necessarily encrypting your traffic, but it's going to mask and anonymize your IP. So that way you're still anonymous in that way. Your ISP might be able to see that you're using torrent traffic, but anyone in the BitTorrent swarm wouldn't be able to see that you're using your real IP. So it's going to protect your real world location that way. And you can also use stuff like proxies in your browser and stuff like that if you're really worried about speed loss and stuff like that as well.
We have some travelers here on the channel. There's some people that are frequenting international countries, and one of them I know for a fact mentioned that he is going to China. Is there a VPN that you could recommend, or you could say, hey, this is one that I know could possibly work out for you? Because, China is one of those places where they're not big fans of Google. They're not big fans of the US when it comes to those types of connection policies. Is there something that you could recommend that could get somebody, make sure that they're hooked up during their trip?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. It is a little bit hard for me to give advice on in some ways, because in order to know what works in China, I would literally have to fly to China and, see what works. But you can also kind of make kind of assumptions about what could work based on, what kind of technology the VPN has. Traditionally, I've always recommended people to use TorGuard VPN for China, because it has a lot of stealth VPN protocols, which basically hides your VPN traffic. That's one way a lot of these governments block VPN users, is because they can identify things as VPN traffic based on certain ports. So some VPNs have specific obfuscation techniques to kind of hide VPN use. TorGuard, it could be one of those options. It's getting harder and harder in China, that's for sure, to use a VPN. And the bad news is, in that couple of years, maybe even now, there isn't going to be that many VPNs that work, unfortunately. And I don't know if you know too much about the political situation in Hong Kong. A lot of VPN critics, VPN advocates and privacy advocates think that maybe China getting closer to extradition with Hong Kong could make the political situation in Hong Kong with VPNs kind of questionable as well, because there are some VPNs actually based in Hong Kong. And if the Chinese government kind of has control of the Hong Kong government, who's to say, what will happen to those VPNs that are based in Hong Kong? Stuff like Pure VPN, a couple other VPNs out there, VPN City, are based in Hong Kong. So it will be interesting to see what happens there.
Okay. Well, I want to take those 5 categories that you typically use to rate your VPNs, and I want you to tell me which VPN is tops in that category. So the first one is pricing. I know this is hard because there's different pricing per month, and then there's 3-month, 6-month, and then annual packages, and then there's even 3-year packages. I'll tell you right now, I will not pay upfront for 3 years of anything. Absolutely not. So let's just throw that out the window, because that's not a realistic option. I don't think anybody in the right mind, if they think about it, would do that. But let's just take a 1-year subscription. Who's got the best 1-year price for a good VPN?
I just want to touch on that a little bit. I agree with you. I actually take that into consideration when pricing VPNs. If something has a really good 3-year plan, I don't necessarily include that as like a good pricing plan. You said the best 1-year plan?
Yeah, like 12 months. You're going to pay it all up front, but we could stomach 1 year. I mean, that's not the end of the world, right?
Mm-hmm. So I would say TorGuard, discount code TomSpark gets you $30 a year. If you want streaming bundle, that's going to be $60 a year. So that's probably the best, cheapest VPN for 1 year that includes all the streaming compatibility with VPN. Stuff like AirVPN is very cheap per year. VPN City, Movad VPN, you could do $5 a month, and subsequently each month it's going to be, it's good because you don't have that commitment, right? They only offer one pricing plan, 1 month at a time. So I think that's pretty transparent and fair. So Movad. Besides that, though, it's actually a trend that VPNs are getting more expensive, actually. So not too many VPNs I would consider, super cheap anymore. Windscribe is a good deal per year as well, but VPNs like private internet access used to be $39.95 a month, and now have gone upwards to 60 plus, more expensive. So we are going to
On the
see
annual plan, right?
yeah, and we are,
Okay.
I think, going to see more VPNs kind of charging more and more. I think a lot of pricing for VPNs is a little inflated because, like I said before, they're getting influencers to sell their products, and there's got to be like a good cut, I guess, between what the influencer is making and what the VPN itself makes. So a lot of times, if a VPN is expensive, that's the reason why, unfortunately, not because it's necessarily worth it.
Right. The other thing that you mentioned, you mentioned TorGuard, and you gave that annual price. It was like $30, and then you
Mm-hmm.
said it goes up to 60 if you have the streaming.
Mm-hmm.
I think what everybody needs to make sure they keep in mind, not every VPN works with streaming. For example, I have an entry-level Windscribe plan,
Mm-hmm.
and all that affords me is a just regular basic VPN service. When I turn on the VPN, I can't stream my Hulu Live content
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't do streaming. So paying the extra for the streaming is a requirement. Not every VPN is going to include it, which is why it costs a little bit more.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Right. So consider that in the pricing, I guess. Another category besides pricing was the application.
Mm-hmm.
Who's got the most feature-rich and loaded application?
So when I take a look at VPNs, oftentimes it's kind of like if a VPN is a really good price, a lot of times it will have other good things in other categories as well. So you can see that as a trend. TorGuard has a very good application. AirVPN has a very good application. VPN Area has a good application. Windscribe definitely has a very good looking application. They've made it look very snazzy if that's important to you. Overall, pretty solid application though as well. Some specific VPNs out there, like Perfect Privacy, have interesting kind of security features that you could take advantage. But I would say that probably my top applications that I prefer are probably going to be TorGuard and AirVPN, and Windscribe looks really good.
So the last thing I wanted to mention, or what is that? Two. So we got pricing, we've got the app. There was one. What was your next thing on the list of categories for VPNs?
We got speed, reputation, support, and then the streaming compatibility, which we already covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we pretty much touched on all of the different, I guess, the analytics that you put into deciding what's considered a good VPN.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to kind of know, because this ties into what our channel covers, and this is kind of random stuff, but we'll kind of connect it. If you don't mind discussing it, who is your wireless service provider? Because you've got the big four. You've got Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Is there one of those four that you utilize, or do you utilize a prepaid carrier or an MVNO?
Verizon.
Okay, so what I want to know is, why do you choose Verizon?
Where I live, the service is better for Verizon. I used to have AT&T, but it seemed like the service wasn't as good. I get service in my apartment with Verizon. I didn't get with AT&T. Overall, with Verizon, I think that the web portal and stuff like that seems a little bit more user-friendly than AT&T. But, I think I've had good and bad experiences at both pretty much so far.
So performance-wise, you would say Verizon's good for you?
Yeah, for, reception and stuff like that.
Do you feel it's expensive?
I definitely think it is expensive. I definitely think it's more expensive than, some of the ones maybe like the Google has one, right, too. What's it called? Do you know?
Google Fi.
Yeah, I think that's pretty affordable. But yeah, I think Verizon might be expensive for me.
It kind of depends on your usage. Like in the case of Google Fi, you're paying per gigabyte until you go over a certain amount. Then it's just a flat rate and it's unlimited. But then they throttle you past that limited amount. So it depends on how you use your data. If you're always tethered and connected to Wi-Fi, it's less of an issue to have unlimited data. But if you want an unlimited data plan, it ends up costing a little bit. And to get it from a premium provider like Verizon, I don't know how many lines you have on your account. If it's a single line, you're probably paying somewhere around $80 or $90 a month. I've got like 6 lines on my account. So it ends up being like $40 or $50 a month per line. But I mean, if you were on just a single line, it's very, very expensive when you look at it that way.
Yeah.
Who's your home ISP?
Comcast.
How do you feel about Comcast, man?
It's one of those things where the monopoly is really hard to get around. I think in a lot of cases, people don't really have a choice. They either, I don't know, get some kind of dial-up or something like that, or they go with Comcast, which is probably going to be the fastest in most areas, I think, at least where I've been. I've had some really bad experiences with customer support, that's for sure. Every time I move, it's really bad at setting it up again. I usually have to spend 2 or 3 hours just setting up my internet, talking to someone on the phone. So definitely for me, not the best experience with Comcast, although I think the pricing and speeds can be good.
The thing about these home ISPs is, like you said, with this whole monopoly thing, you don't have choices. And a lot of times what they do is, on purpose, they kind of get these regional sections of cities. So in this zip code or in this area code, it's Cox. In this part, it's Time Warner Spectrum. In this part, it's AT&T. And what they do is they corner it in a way to where if you want good speeds, this is the only provider doing it. And if you want dial-up, this other one is doing it.
Yeah.
So if you don't like one, you're kind of cursed. You really have to pick your poison.
Mhm.
Now, I pay $70 a month for 300 megabits per second download and 30 megabits per second upload. So I think $70 is a decent price. There are people on municipal providers. They're like city-run utility companies. They're getting full gig download, 1,000 megabits per second download, and they're getting like symmetrical. It's like 1,000 upload, and they're paying like $40 and $50. I mean, it's insane how the monopolies of these companies are taking advantage of people. And
right, exactly. It
it's
kind of reminds
really,
me of the
really
whole
frustrating.
electricity thing, right? Like we could technically, in terms of the capability of technology, almost have free electricity, but they don't really want us to have free electricity. And I think a lot of ways, internet could be kind of like that as well. Yeah, that's a good example. Certain cities definitely get, cheaper internet and faster speeds as well. I wish I lived somewhere like that.
So Tom, I'm from the Cleveland area. I'm from the 216, man. And we have choices, but like I said, they get these little sections of towns where it's like, okay, this section is Comcast, this section is Spectrum. Doesn't really give people a choice. So that is a pain point, I think. Well, if you don't mind me asking, like what city and state do you live in?
That's probably something I do want to keep private just for
Okay.
anonymity's sake.
No, not a problem. Not a problem. The reason I share is because when we discuss pricing, it gives people an idea of like if they live in an urban area or if they live in a countryside area. Because what I've seen is in rural parts of states, the pricing is absurd, and they're usually getting services like HughesNet, which is a satellite internet provider, and people are paying $120 a month for like 5 megabits per second.
So saying
And
people
it's
in
almost
rural
like
areas pay more and get slower speeds.
much slower speeds, and they even have data caps.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty
it's just
crazy.
frustrating.
I mean, I also deal with data caps as well, and I've kind of, if I download games on Xbox, there's been a couple months where I get that warning that I've gone over, and I just think it's stupid how they implement those data caps, and they didn't used to
How are
have
they
them.
charging you for going overtime?
Well, I think I've only gone over like 2 times, and I think they have like you could go over like 3 times before they start charging, but I think it could be, anywhere from like $20 extra a month or something. I know some people are just like, oh, you should just get the unlimited because, it's worth it. But it's kind of how they try to steer you down that path, right? Upgrading. We used to, get unlimited for free, but now it's like, or at least at the price, and now you have to pay extra for it. So they're just finding every possible way to make us pay more money.
Yeah, $20 here, $30 here, a fee here, a bump here. Very frustrating as a consumer with these providers. The one thing I wanted to ask you, are you a fan of smartphone technology, or do you follow any of the releases, the new up and coming devices, anything like that?
I'm a big phone guy. Got some favorite YouTubers, MKBHD, always checking out his videos. Are you a fan of Jerry Rig Everything?
Oh, I love Jerry Rig, man.
Yeah, my wife watches me. I watch those on my TV, and she just laughs at me when I'm watching those videos because they're so like boring and just taking apart a phone, but they're so interesting. Seeing how some of the stuff technology works is very fun. And I was just watching the video about the Asus phone, or Asus, however you want to say it, where the camera kind of flips up and you could take the selfie. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is unique. And that's
Yeah,
what Zach does. Zach gets those like really crazy. I wouldn't want to say they're like weird, but they're like the innovative phones that do unique things in terms of functionality. Like he'll take apart a phone and cut open the heatsink.
yeah.
Or he'll look at, oh, here's the waterproofing. So he goes looking for, different little gaskets and rubberized pieces. And basically it's glue, but, he goes through all this. And I'm an iPhone repair specialist myself. I've been doing repairs on iPhones for years. And that's how I got started, was watching Zach's videos, man.
Yeah, it's crazy because in a lot of ways he makes it look so easy. And I know from my own experience trying to repair some of the phones that I've dealt with, my wife had a phone. And, I was like, oh, I'll just replace the battery. 20 minutes later, the battery's like bent and it's smoking. And I'm like, what have I done? So you really got to be careful with some of that stuff. And, he makes it look easy, but I'm sure too, it can be tricky repairing those phones because, they're making them kind of intentionally hard to repair almost at, especially some phones.
Yeah, I've been repairing iPhones since probably the 5 or the 5C. Or the 5S, right around those generations. And
do you know which generation was the easiest to repair, or have you noticed like a decline or anything like that?
So the 5S, I mean, that's when I started. So like if I'm going to compare like those phones to even the newer ones, they've always been relatively easy to replace displays. So the iPhone displays are easy to fix, especially the LCD technology. Mm-hmm. The new ones are very expensive. The iPhone 10, the 10s, and the 10s Max, super expensive, using OLED. I believe they're coming from Samsung, actually. So it's not that they're more difficult to fix. It's just there's a lot more on the line. So if you're not gentle with the ribbon cables and the display, cracking it is going to be very costly. But I will say that the fingerprint scanner, first generation on the 5S, was kind of a pain in the ass because like it's got this little connector. And if you don't have like a tweezers to like try to, put it down on the board, it's just a nightmare to put down. That was kind of a pain in the ass. The iPhone 6 Plus introduced the whole bending problem.
Yeah.
It started messing with the IC units, so people were getting what's called touch disease on their displays. They're like, oh, my phone like does these app launches by itself, and Apple, of course, deflected blame. Hey, don't sit on your phone and, put a case on it. They were just blaming the consumer.
And now they have the thing with like the laptops, right? The keyboards. Have you heard about that?
The butterfly keyboards, right? Oh my God, man. It's been one thing after the other with Apple. But like, as somebody who does the repairs, I'm a consumer advocate. I don't want them to have to replace their phone. We replace what needs to be replaced. So I don't know if you watch Louis Rossmann.
Yeah, I watch his videos sometimes. I actually really like one of his videos. He talks about how NordVPN tried to reach out to him and get to advertise on his channel, and he actually spoke of what he felt about it, how the email was written kind of like a scam, and he advises other YouTubers not to monetize their content that way. But yeah, another YouTube repairman.
I almost forgot, Tom. I actually wanted to bring this up. They reached out to me. NordVPN, and I couldn't do it, man. They gave me an affiliate link. They gave me an entire thing of they gave me like a script of what I could read during my videos.
Oh yeah, they love those scripts.
And I couldn't do it, man. I know about them. I know how the process works. I've been hearing what you have to say. It all makes sense to me, and I just couldn't do it, man. Look, don't get me wrong. I want to monetize my channel to the point where it's sustaining and profitable and all these great things. But I still have to think to myself, if I'm operating in the best interest of my viewers and my subscribers, I have to give them good product. And it can't be something shady. It can't be something backdoor and sneaky.
Yeah.
NordVPN is one of those companies by any means necessary. They just want to grow and be rich, and they deflect blame. And I don't know, there's just too much negativity associated with the company. So I couldn't do it.
I think one thing a lot of YouTubers don't think about, and it's like there's not just like one option, right? They pick NordVPN because, like you said, they reached out to you and they kind of made it easy. They give you a script. It really just kind of comes down to laziness, right? You could do research, and find products that are better and recommend those to your user base, and I think that's fine. But I think the problem is people just don't do enough research. They just want to make more money. They don't necessarily care how they're making that money.
So, which phone are you using currently since you are a smartphone guy?
Galaxy S10, and it's been pretty good.
Is that the regular one or the Plus?
I got the Galaxy S10 regular. I don't know. I think the big phones are just a little bit too big for me. I mean, I'm a pretty big guy, 6'2", but I don't know how people have these big phones. And I mean, I like it to be so I can use it with one hand at least,
Yeah, I'm using the Google Pixel 3 AXL. I just sold my Google Pixel 2 XL, and I literally downgraded because it has a headphone jack. By downgrading, I feel like I upgraded my feature.
Yeah.
The camera's still pretty good. The battery life is fantastic. I've been really happy with that move over. I just had to have a headphone jack back, man.
Did you find that with the Pixel 2? Did you have any issues with the screen or anything like that? I actually had tried.
Great.
Yeah, I tried the Pixel 2 and ended up returning it because I found that the screen provided by LG had a lot of grain to it. Did you find like that? How bad was that for you?
Weird viewing it in a dark room. You would see that grain.
Yeah, with the white screens too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And like a light green, it was very noticeable. It was just strange because the display itself was a quad HD display. You'd think, okay, this is a high resolution display. LG makes amazing displays on TVs. When somebody asks what type of TV I should get, it's easy. I tell them either a Samsung or LG.
Speaking of LG, you see this back here? This monitor? You see this?
Yeah, I see that.
I just broke this the other week after having it for 1 week. It fell over and shattered.
Jeez, man. Is that covered under warranty?
No, probably not. But yeah, I think they do make pretty good. I had some experience with LG. Some of the TVs can be a little bit buggy. But yeah, they do make some good displays. But yeah, the phones, I'm not sure what's going on there.
All right, a couple of other things that I want to mention before we kind of cap this off. Are you up to date or interested in 5G technology and 5G networks?
Not super knowledgeable about it. I know pretty much it's just going to be faster. I mean, I'm all for more speeds. What do you know about it?
So the latency is really the big thing for me. I think about the gaming application, right, for people that are gamers. And I think about IoT, and I think about connected vehicles. The latency on 5G is theoretically going to be like sub 3 milliseconds, which is incredible. So like instantaneous connectivity, being able to send packets of data like incredibly fast, and there's no slowdown, right? So it's not just the actual speed of the connection, like, yeah, it's going to be fast. Like it's supposed to be a gigabit per second or more, 1.5, 2 gigs per second. But the latency is going to be really, really low. Is that something that you think in places that don't have good home ISP? Do you see 5G becoming something useful to people in these rural areas as a solution, not having good home ISP options?
I mean, I think that's a good point. I think it definitely could be. I think what it comes down to, though, is going to be the pricing. So I guess with 5G, right, it's going to be like, is it just going to be like through phones? Are people going to be using it on their phones, like in terms of like tethering, or is it going to be also something that they could use on their like computers? How's that going to work?
So some companies are providing like hubs or hotspots. Some companies are just doing it through mobility on phones, so they would be like hotspot. Some are doing fixed 5G, where there's going to be like a hub that's outside of an apartment building, and it's going to transmit a wireless signal from the hub to whatever available can transmit the signal. So it's got to be compatible with the airwaves. So Whether it's millimeter wave or it's sub 6 gigahertz, there's different frequencies. That kind of depends. But I mean, that's kind of what's going to be, it's going to be used for.
Yeah.
Pricing wise, from what we've seen, Sprint is currently charging $80 a month for a smartphone to have 5G,
Is that
limited coverage,
unlimited?
limited
Oh,
markets.
unlimited.
Yeah, but it's limited markets. It's in like 5 cities.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
Verizon's got it in 2 cities, and it's using millimeter wave, which doesn't propagate well, so it's hard to get connected.
Mm-hmm.
AT&T has it, but it's only developer and enterprise, so not like for you or me who are using it residential and just regular consumer usage. So there's a lot of limitations now, but that's kind of the big thing in wireless. Anything that you've heard about the Sprint and T-Mobile merger?
No, but going back to those speeds, I think one thing that could be interesting to see is maybe how it impacts gaming in terms of cloud kind of gaming. Have you heard of the Stadia, Google Stadia?
Yeah. Yep,
So
they're a gaming platform.
yeah, it doesn't require too fast a speed. So if people could get a good enough speeds through something like 5G, that could be interesting to see how it impacts gaming. Say you're at a hotel, you could get 5G or something like that and connect to Google Stadia and get 4K 60 FPS gaming. That could be pretty cool. But in
What do
terms
they
of
need for that, Tom?
what did they need for Google Stadia?
Yeah, what type of speeds are we talking?
I don't think that fast actually.
It's got to be at least 20 megs per second.
I think that's like kind of the midpoint where like you can do it.
I was going to say, because I don't know, 10 would seem really low. I mean, and it's got to be consistent, because if it's dropping between like 50 and 5 and 20 and 40, I mean, isn't there going to be some inconsistency there with the connection?
Yeah, there are people that are critics that think like, it does need to be a really consistent connection. So it'll be interesting to see, how it pans out.
Okay.
But in terms of the merger, no, I don't know anything about it.
That's the big thing on the channel right now for us, Tom. We're following really, really closely. So you've got Verizon, you've got AT&T. They're the kings at the top. Each of them has like 150 million subscribers. And then you've got T-Mobile, who's got about 80 million. And you've got Sprint with about 54 million. So you've got these two smaller companies that want to merge to become a larger third competitor, as opposed to having two large ones, small one, then an extremely small one. And there's a lot of politics to it. There's a lot of hoopla going on. There are people that oppose this merger because they say we're losing competition. And then there are others that are saying, hey, this makes T-Mobile better, a third competitor legitimate to compete with Verizon and AT&T. So that's kind of the big thing that's going on my channel and in the wireless space.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how these companies kind of consolidate. It happens in the VPN world too, or just anywhere in the tech world. In some ways, I think the consolidation of kind of these companies I think it's kind of like a bad thing. I think it's kind of like how monopolies are formed, right? And I think having more companies with more competition is probably a better option than having just like a few companies to choose from, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, in this case, we have two big carriers, a small one, and then a failing one. So I would rather have 3 legitimate
Than just
options than to have the two real national carriers, and then one is playing catch up and the other one is failing. It's so like in theory, more is better, but when the fourth is useless and the third is too small, it's not ideal. That's not for legitimate competing. Like if you think about like fueling stations, if you have 4 gas stations on a corner, that only helps the consumer, right? But only if the 4 all can compete. If one is really good and one is also really good, then the other one is failing and it's going to close in a week or 2 weeks or a month. And then it's just, they have to all be similar in terms of what they can achieve. You have Verizon for a reason. It's good service.
Yeah.
Good network. You had AT&T. It was also pretty good, right? T-Mobile is getting better, but they're playing catch up. They're the youngest carrier. And then Sprint is failing. And I think we see people that are kind of like that. Theoretically, we need 4 carriers. But I think what we need to do is, and this is kind of the political side, the Department of Justice understands this. they are okay, it looks like, with the merger, but they want to create a legitimate fourth carrier to replace Sprint.
Hmm.
But
What
see
about
what
the
I'm so they're
argument?
addressing the anti-competition part.
What do you think of the argument that like these companies, like if they're not doing well, maybe they like deserve to like just like not be a company?
That's fine. If
Mm.
I'm okay with Sprint going bankrupt if they fail. What I'm saying, I want to see T-Mobile grow because T-Mobile is the only consumer-friendly wireless provider.
Are they your
They give
favorite one?
people stuff for free. No, I mean,
Oh,
well, so mine is Verizon.
okay.
The reason T-Mobile I support them so much is because they force the market to respond.
Hmm.
So when Verizon had uh, when they were selling data by the bucket, 50 gigs for the entire family, right? 25 gigs for the entire family. T-Mobile said, to hell with that. We're doing unlimited. 2 years later, Verizon responds and does unlimited. The only reason I have unlimited is because of T-Mobile,
Right.
even though I myself don't have T-Mobile. So I would like to see T-Mobile succeed because even if I don't have them, they affect my pricing. They
Hmm.
affect my market.
Right. The
So
competition
I feel
makes
like they're
Verizon's
important.
product better.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm good with that. So if T-Mobile becomes a legitimate third carrier where they are truly threatening the other two, I like my chances better as a consumer from that angle.
That makes sense.
But I would like to see a fourth carrier still replace Sprint as they were consumed in this. So whether that's Dish, which to me it doesn't matter who the fourth carrier is. I just want them to be better than Sprint,
Hmm.
the one that they're replacing. So that's kind of where I'm at, and that's what we're following closely on the channel. What I want to do, Tom, I mean, we obviously could go on forever, but I want to give you an opportunity to plug your channel. Any other things that you guys are doing with the VPN tier list, you guys could, or you could go ahead and tell my audience about it.
Yeah. So if you want to check me out, Tom Spark VPN, look that up in YouTube. You should be able to find it, or check out vpntierlist.com. See a comparison table and a list ranking of all the VPNs I've checked out on my channel. That's where you can find me.
All right, so Tom, what I want to do is I want to thank you for coming on, man. I think you offer a wealth of knowledge. I've been watching your videos for about a year. I've watched pretty much everything that you've uploaded for like the past year, and I actually used your channel to make a decision on which VPN I should use. I have used a couple different ones because I mean you've recommended that.
Hmm.
Try a couple, see which ones you like.
Right.
I've gone with some of your in your top five. That's what
Hmm.
I've gone ahead and tried, and it's been really good. So I can tell you for those that are watching, he's a trusted voice in VPNs. I think he gives all the VPNs a fair shake. I think his criteria of a good VPN is legitimate, and I think he does really good work. So if you guys need to learn more about VPNs or maybe something piqued your interest today, go ahead and check out Tom Spark Review. He also has a Discord server. He's got the website. Plug the website one more time.
VPNtierlist.com.
And yeah, check him out, guys. Really, really good stuff. Tom, I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time to join me on the Sneed Mobile Tech podcast. Um, that's really all I wanted to cover with you today. I'd love to have you back on if you ever find the time, make yourself available. The invitation on Sneed Mobile Tech is always open to you, my friend.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on here. Yeah, it was great talking to you. I learned some things today, as probably some of your viewers did too, about all that's going on your channel. Very interesting to hear about uh, different kind of political situation or just what's going on with these carriers for sure. And yeah, we'll have to catch up again soon. All right.
Cool. So, Tom, I'm going to continue with my podcast,
All right.
and you could just stop the broadcast from your side with the Hangout.
All right. See you later, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, Tom. All right, that was Tom Spark. That was fantastic, man. I'm glad he made it on. All right, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to figure out what's going on. Somebody was saying my audio situation is kind of jacked up. Give me 1 second. Let me fix that, okay? Hang tight. All right, what's going on, guys? Are we how we feeding here? Get me an audio and get me a visual. I'm just gonna hop into the live chat here. If you guys can get me an audio and a visual, make sure I'm feeding well here. Yeah, I have no idea what was going on with the audio and the visual prior, but glad it's better. All right, cool. I have no idea what was going on there. I was like connected to, all the devices. Everything was good. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. All right, so, and I probably don't even need these headphones. If Pete is still in the house, not sure if he is or not. Pete, let me know if you're still in the chat if you want to hop on. Keep the open invite. We'll see what's going on here. I have a lot of catching up to do. All right, so I can't go back to everything that was in the chat. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the live chats that I missed, or the super chats. Pete says you didn't ask him about the problem with AT&T. Man, sorry about the audio distortion, guys. Couldn't figure out what's going on. All right, let's see. Martin, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Much appreciated. Actually, I can't access the stuff from before. So if you gave me a super chat, guys, thank you so much for the super chats. I just can't access it. I'm trying to get back. Let's see here. Pete, are you jumping in here? Should I be sending this? I'll send you the invite if you're coming on here. Anyway. Where am I at here? This. So what I wanted to do, guys, with today's podcast, I wanted to bring on a special guest. I've been working hard to try to get some collaborations going here on the channel. I know that VPNs aren't necessarily the topic of the channel, but VPN services are something that I use as a consumer, a protection of security, a protection of being anonymous, right, for privacy. It's something that I use personally, so I thought it would be useful to bring somebody on who I consider to be a trusted voice in VPNs. I mean, Tom is a very nice guy. Obviously, I had him on. I mean, you could kind of tell, like, with certain people, like, you could tell they're legitimate. And I think Tom Spark is one of those guys that does his best to offer good quality content on the YouTube in a way that's easy to understand. And, he's got his own little style and his own personality to it. And I just thought it would be something that you guys might appreciate and like, and just to kind of broaden the horizon of the channel a little bit. I know we all want to talk about the merger and like all that's important, but it's just one angle, right? We talk about wireless ISPs, but our privacy protections are important too. So I thought it would be valuable to bring him on, and he so graciously accepted the invite, and I was glad that he could be on. So big shout out to Tom Spark over on the for being here on the podcast. Sebastian says, Sneed, you ever think of buying a lifetime Windscribe package? You said you are using Windscribe but limited. Yeah, I would never actually recommend a lifetime package of any VPN service. So here's what happens with a VPN service when you purchase a lifetime service. When you pay upfront for a VPN for a lifetime or for 3 years, any long-term commitment past a few months, they could throttle you, slow you down, change business policies. They could do a lot of different things on you, that you have no option. You either cancel it or you're stuck with it. So when you pay for, like, say, for example, 1 month or 3 months, you put their feet to the fire. You could always just discontinue service once your time is up. When you do something for 3 years, that's a long commitment. The pricing's kind of, expensive in a way, right? They try to tell you, oh, it's cheap when you look at it by the month basis. I can't recommend going long term like that. So, yeah. Um, oh, hold on one second, Pete. Let me get you that link. Where did it go? I have no idea where it just went. Okay, so I think what I want to do actually is everybody in the live chat, hang tight. I'm going to actually make a new live stream, a new podcast to separate this one. So we'll just call this one the Tom Spark interview. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new one and we'll carry on the rest of the evening. Give me about 5 minutes. All right. I'll see you guys in a second.